Welcome to the Better Two podcast. I'm your host, Donna. Today's guest is Gerald Jones. And Gerald comes on the show to talk about his app that he created with his best friend, Kevin Clark, called the Blessn app. He created it with his friend because they were tired of looking at the internet and, well, doom scrolling. Nobody likes to doom scroll. But we talk about that and we talk about his experience in the Boston Marathon, mental health, and so much more. So tune in. Hi, Gerald. How are you doing today?
Good. Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you. Thanks for asking.
So you are out in LA, correct?
Yes, I'm in LA. Yes.
So your world is a little bit different, and I know you have an Emmy background. And what is different right now is that you have created an app with your partner, friend, Kevin Clark. And Kevin is not here with us. He was supposed to be when things happen. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about the app, and I understand why you did it because doom scrolling is definitely, I don't want to say an addiction, but it kind of is an addiction for some.
Yeah, it's funny. Me and Kevin, we were thinking the same thing about the same time. And it was just following the pandemic. We started really getting into social media because everybody was stuck at home. So we were scrolling a lot and it was fun and it was light and it felt, just people were doing silly stuff because of everything that was going on in the world. So it was kind of fun. And then shortly after that, we started to notice that it started getting darker and people were doing anything for clicks and clickbait and nastier. People were playing pranks on each other, or you'd be scrolling and you would, your algorithm should show you the positive stuff that you've been liking. And all of a sudden you scroll and you see somebody getting hurt or getting hit by a car or something really bad or tragic. So I called Kevin and I'm like, hey man, I got an idea. So I was telling him, hey, I think about this app. And at the time, we didn't have a name for it, but I was like, why don't we create an app that is all uplifting, all positive, and instead of doom scrolling, faith scrolling and just uplifting content. And because he was feeling the exact thing at the exact same time, he was like, I'm in, let's do it. So now we have Blessing.
And what you're saying, I mean, it is so true because when you look at the social media, how it has evolved, and I know you're pretty much, you know what it's like to not have social media.
Yes.
And I'm from the same school, and it's like when you look at how it has evolved, and there's this adage of my mother used to always say it. If someone does something, are you going to be stupid enough? If they jump off a bridge, are you going to follow? And that is kind of the mantra of social media when you think about it. It's like, oh, somebody's going to jump out. I used to work in insurance, so this just really gets me. I'm going to jump out of my car and dance while the car's
Yeah.
moving.
Hmm.
Rationally, you're going, what?
Yeah.
But people, because somebody else blew up because of it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So, and you have to ask this because of tech companies, and I know now you have your own app, but tech companies, they feed this algorithm and then they keep making it darker and darker and darker. And dare I say, think about the whole dystopia of the world that we had. We had all these movies come out that were all dystopian, and suddenly
Mhm.
McDonald's is gray instead of the happy colors it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, no, I think I feel the same thing. I grew up in a time before social media. I even was a late adapter to social media. I didn't really get into it until around 2019, 2020. Um, and that's when I thought, oh, this is fun, but I also have kids. So then I started to think, oh, this is getting dangerous. This is getting, and then the mental health aspect to it. It's like brain rot. You're scrolling and scrolling, your attention span is shrinking, and you're seeing people jumping out of their cars and doing something silly or doing camera tricks where you think they're actually doing something, but it's actually something very dangerous, but it's a camera trick. And the younger generation may not recognize that this is not real or this is not real life. These young people in their 20s are not on private jets. Most of them, a lot of that is fake. So we created this app, especially for the younger generation, because we thought this is a safe place where if you wake up in the morning and you start doom scrolling on some other social media platforms, you're going to have a bad day or it's going to be on your mind all day. But if you wake up in the morning and you look at Blessing and it's like this positive affirmation, all these positive messages, and it's still fun. People are doing dances, people are doing fun stuff, but we wanted to make sure that we kept it positive So, like me, I follow a lot of Christian influencers, and still I will scroll and scroll and I'll see the stuff I like, and I'll still run into something that is totally not, you know, something that I was looking for. And I'd be like, whoa, why? And then if you stay on it too long to try to figure out what am I looking at here, you stay on it too long, they'll feed more of it to you. And I'm like, I don't want this anymore. How do I get it off of my algorithm? So we want to just create a positive algorithm for everyone.
And I want to go back to something you said about how the younger generation may not know it's real and they may do this. When you think back to Bugs Bunny, when they would have Saturday morning cartoons and everything, they're like, well, we have to take Bugs Bunny off because kids may not be able to tell the difference whether it's real or not.
Yeah.
And when you look at AI, especially AI, and like you said, camera tricks, how do you know what's real? And that really does affect the brain.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've got fooled by AI so many times. I had to take a second or third look, like, wait, is this real? And some of it's really cute, like a puppy doing something silly or a cat doing something silly, but it looks so real. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. So AI is here to stay. There's none, the genie's out of the bottle. I don't know if we can get it back in the bottle because these, larger tech companies are going to push it. And hopefully it will create some positive stuff. Just like, I was there when the internet started. So there was a lot of scary stuff then. The original internet, I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that it really blew up because of some adult content. And then, now we have safer spaces, and now there's protection in place hopefully there's still protection in place to keep people off of sites that they shouldn't be looking at. But now we have social media where if you're not careful, you'll run into something that, or your children will run into something that you wouldn't want them to see, or it's not aligned with your values. So that's why we thought we need to create a safe space. I have three kids. Kevin has one kid. And so we're thinking about this younger generation and how can we help them to, live a more positive life.
There's a lot of talk, though. You were saying AI is here to stay, but there's a lot of talk. There's a couple of things, AI, the AI bust. Kind of like the .com because they've invested so much money, but the return on AI is not there.
Yeah,
Secondly, a lot of the younger generations are saying, I want non-digital media. I want to be able to connect. And I think that's something that because of the pandemic, we lost a lot of that connection and people lost, I don't want to say civility, but in a lot of cases, people don't know how to interact with somebody.
you're right. You are right. I think it's harder for kids now because when I was younger, and I don't want to age myself, but we were outside all the time. And it was before cell phones. We had to use a payphone. We'd call people and we'd call them collect and be like, hey, call me back and then give them the number real quick. So I was like a free range kid. I was running around. My grandparents lived on one block left, one block right, so the whole neighborhood knew everybody. Nowadays, the kids are more isolated because they're at home all the time, and now there's a lot of times there's two working parents, and I had one parent at home most of the time, and my dad would work. So there's always somebody around. But even with my kids, it's two working parents. You try to connect with them, you try to sit down and have dinner together, but some families don't have that. So I think social media is where they go to try to connect with people. So I want them to see real people, real messages, and real positive messages. If that's where they're going to go anyways, they should have an option to say, okay, well, I've seen enough of people getting hurt. I've seen enough people eating Tide Pods or doing something dangerous. Let me go see what's going on Blessn right before you go to sleep. You don't want to have a nightmare? Jump on Blessn and scroll, and then you fall asleep thinking uplifting thoughts.
Well, and I want to touch on something that you and Kevin had done, which was the PSA for in-school violence. And there was somebody I was talking to yesterday. The sheer fact that I think my generation, maybe yours, because you don't want to age yourself, but my generation was like the last generation not to deal with school shootings. I mean, we had the biggest thing we didn't have active shooter drills. We had a tornado drill where you're going to
Oh,
go out in the hall and put a book over your head. Let's be honest here, that's not going to save you in a tornado, but this is what we were taught. But we didn't have that stress, and so when you look at that compounded with social media, compounded with social interaction that can be bullying,
Yeah.
Kids nowadays are under such chronic stress from such a young age.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm in California, so we had earthquake drills and we had fire drills, and that was it. I didn't even hear about school shootings until I remember the first school shooting I ever heard about. I was the woman I was dating at the time, who's now my wife. Her mom was in the hospital. I went to go visit. We were waiting in the lobby, and it was the Columbine. I think
Okay.
that was the first time I've ever heard about a school shooting. And now it's so common these days. So, and I think it has a lot to do, and that's before social media, I believe. So I think it
Hmm.
has a lot to do with the stress these kids are under. And now the images they see are also creating more and more stress to fit in, or now they don't fit in because they can get bullied online or um, targeted online because they're not fitting into what the social norms are at that particular area. So it's a lot harder for kids these days.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was working at McDonald's in 1984, and mass shootings at that point were few and far between. And somebody had gone into a McDonald's out in California and shot up the place. And it
Mm.
really didn't bother, I mean, it bothered me, but it didn't bother me until I had a customer come in and ask me. Like I said, 17 years old. She asked me to my face, "Are you scared to work here now since that shooting happened?"
Yeah,
And I remember just everything shifting at that moment, like, yeah, I guess I am, because it could happen here. And when I worked at Chuck E. Cheese, we had somebody come in after hours and rob the store.
oh wow.
And I remember how panicked I was going through that. So we don't think about those moments of, when it doesn't affect us, we don't fully grasp how traumatizing it could be. We can sit
Yeah.
there and say we feel it, but do we really understand the gravity of being in that situation?
Yeah. No, I know about trauma. And I've talked to people about it. I worked in the hospital for years, for 17 years. And Kevin and I own a business where we work with the developmentally disabled. But also, what I've learned about myself in trauma, I ran the Boston Marathon in 2013, and that was the year that it was bombed. So I was not near the bombing. I was about a mile away. So I was, I was safe. But my wife was at the finish line and they cut off all communication. So it was a scary moment because I didn't know where my wife was. I didn't know what was happening. We weren't getting play by plays like as somebody at home
Right.
is listening to the news and they're getting details. We have no details. We're in the middle of the road and everybody's like, get out of here. So we're just walking the streets in Boston, which I've never been before until that day. And I didn't realize that I was traumatized from that moment until like a year later. I snapped at somebody, and then I was like, "What's going on?" And I never got therapy. I probably should have, but I didn't know that I was having these issues until I realized, like, wait a minute, it's all this pent up
Hmm.
fear and like anger about the what happened then, about the unknowing and my safety and how dangerous that moment was. So that's why I thought Blessn is could also be a mental health resources because if you're seeing a bunch of negative stuff and you experience some trauma in your life, you think this is the norm and you're going to get snappy like I did. And I didn't know why. And you didn't have an outlet and you didn't have the resources. And I had the resources, I just didn't know I had an issue. So I use Blessn myself as an app just because it uplifts me when I see people using it. I use the thing every day. I use it like all the first thing I do in the morning, I wake up, I look at it in the afternoon. And it's not just because I'm the owner, but I like to see the people that we are getting on there and people have been jumping on using it, which is awesome. Seeing how positive this is and going out and uplifting and encouraging each other. So I think the world needs some positivity with everything that's negative that's going on these days.
Well, and you make a good point about the mental health aspect, that because when you've grown up in trauma, when you've lived through enough trauma, you don't see it. When my husband was sick, he had a long-term illness, and after he passed, our primary care doctor looked at me and she goes, "Do you realize the stress you've been under for the last 5 years?" And I just kind of looked at her like, "No." And I've talked to people about things that have happened in my life when I was a kid and stuff, and they're like, "I can't believe you survived all that." And I'm just like, it's my life. It's the norm. And I think that's the thing. You become conditioned to your trauma. Like and then you have that moment where you snap, where everything has built up, and then you're like, okay, now what? And it's that release valve. And if you can find a way to work through that and get help to work through it if you can, then do it. And if the app helps you, that's awesome. That's incredible that it does because that's a gift.
I like what you said that you get accustomed to your trauma. This is just the norm for you. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that when they're dealing with trauma because it just seems so normal. You never get to see the other side to say, well, wait a minute, maybe I am reacting negatively in a situation because of something that happened in my past. You don't know. So, I mean, mental health is so important these days. We work with a lot of young men who need to see behavioral therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists. So we deal with mental health a lot outside of Blessn and our other business. So it's so important to me because the experience I've had seeing other young my uncle he passed away but he had trauma because he was in New Orleans during the when the levees broke
Katrina.
and same thing he was self treating himself. He didn't go get the therapy he should have gotten. So, and it caused a lot of stress, the eating disorder, a lot of other things because it was so traumatic. Um, he wasn't rescued for like 3 days. So it was very scary for him, very scary for everybody in the family. And so if anybody's watching this or listening to this, and you do feel like you're having some mental health issues, please seek help. I mean, there's got to be a way, there's got to be resources out there. I wish I didn't know we were going to go down this path. I would have pulled up some resources, but there's got to be some resources out there to help people when they're having these type of stressful situations.
And one thing I will suggest is while I know ChatGPT has that function to be able to be a therapist, there have
Hmm.
been some not so pleasant outcomes from that. So try to find a human therapist because there is an algorithm you're talking to, and it's not really being clear and concise, and it's not going to question you sometimes. And that's one thing that's great about talk therapy is if you have a good counselor that you are comfortable with and you share things, then they can question your motivation and they can question why you're doing this thing. Is this something from your past? Did this, there's more ways to unwrap or unpack the onion than just something going, yeah, you're right. And there was somebody allegedly that was doing therapy with Chat GPT and it basically said, go kill yourself.
Oh my gosh. That's
There's
scary.
there's a lawsuit pending for that. And that may not be Chat GPT, but I'm pretty sure it was. But there was an online therapist situation with an AI, and basically the AI basically said, I think the kid said something like, "My life, I can't go on with my life," and the AI agreed.
Oh, I don't like that.
No,
No.
so that this is the thing. You have to look at what is going back to what we were talking about earlier. What is real and how do you navigate that? And you have to be honest. If you have to take medication, you have to take medication. But
Yes.
work with the doctor to make sure it's the right medication because not all medications are going to be right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the another issue is low income families or may not have the resources in the neighborhoods they live into. And it's hard if you don't um, have access to get to those places. So if there is one online that's not I definitely seek it. And I'm gonna actually do some research today to see if I can find something because I think it's so important to get that message out that if you're feeling down or if there's got to be somebody to talk to, a school counselor or somebody in the community or your church, your pastor, somebody in your neighborhood. There's got to be some resources just to get it off your chest because I didn't have anybody to talk to when I was stressing out. My wife was in the same situation. We never talked about it, which it sounds crazy. Like we came home and we just never talked about it. And then it wasn't, like I said, until a year later that I was like, I think I was at work and I just snapped at somebody. And I'm really a laid back guy. So I snapped at somebody and it was so off for me to be like that that it made me do the self-reflect and say, whoa, why am I so tense? And why have I felt so tense for so long? And I brought it all the way back to Boston and I was like, that's it. It was that moment that situation that's been pent up for years, and I didn't talk to anybody about it. I just like, we survived, keep moving, go back to work, do your thing, life goes on, and I never got to really process the whole thing.
And that's the key thing is if you don't process, that we are taught as adults and as individuals to keep going. It's the whole adage of, and I hate to bring this up, but back in the 70s, you're going to cry, I'll give you something to cry about.
Oh my God, I've heard that so many times.
And the thing is, though, you're not processing. You're told to keep going. You're told to keep moving. And
Yeah.
my therapist has a great thing that she says, name it, tame it, claim it. So, like when went back to that trauma in Boston, it's like you named it. You finally recognized what it was. But it was much easier if you guys went back home. It doesn't surprise me that you didn't talk about it because if you talked about it, then you have to face it. You have to face the possibility of, I thought I was going to lose you.
Yeah.
And that's not something that is comfortable for us. Death is not something that's comfortable. And so, why would you want to face this? Yes, you
Yeah.
survived. I'm grateful you're here. Let's just move on. It was a horrendous thing,
Hmm.
but you never deal with the emotions. And the emotions, what people don't think about is the emotions can build up in your body and create a situation that can be not only toxic for your mental health, but toxic for your physical health. And this can go as far as having a toxic job. And nobody
Yeah.
talks about that because we all need money.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also leads to generational trauma because if you don't treat your trauma, then guess what? You're gonna pass it down to your kid because you don't know how to deal with it, and now they're suffering because of your trauma, and now they have trauma. And generation after generation after generation is going to be generational trauma if somebody doesn't stop and say, I'm going to be the one to stop this whole situation so I protect my future generations from at least this particular trauma.
And that's
So
the
it's so important.
and the other thing about it is too is with trauma, we can get past something, we can work through it, but very much like a video game, we're going to give you another helping of it to make sure that you've learned this lesson.
Yeah.
And it's not the exact same lesson, but there's similarities. You may
Mm.
notice that you pick people that remind you of somebody else that caused you problems, but you don't see it initially. You're just like, "Oh, this is great, the friendship." You have to really unpack and look at the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough out there. The world is a tough place to navigate, and it's getting more and more strange because there's like you're saying the AI situation, and who knows what else is coming, and the media situation. So I really, do not envy this younger generation and the stuff they have to go through because I didn't deal with this stuff until I was well out of high school. Internet was barely kicking off
Hmm.
in when I first got introduced was like 1999 when we had that dial-up connection at my mom's house and stuff. So I was more mature, but younger kids, they're on the internet at like 5, 6 years old, and they're playing these games. My daughter was playing Roadblocks, and I don't know anything about this stuff, so I'm like, who are you talking to? Who are you laughing with? Who is so it's just so scary out there because you don't know if there's an adult on these games playing to be a kid or so you just gotta, as a parent, you gotta kind of watch everything. So it's a lot of stress on the parents because you gotta try to really be involved with the kids, and you want to be the cool parent, but you gotta be involved and you gotta know that they're safe. And also, it's stressful for the kids because there's some bad people out there who are gonna try to play games with you or trick you, and some of them are adults and some of them are your classmates. So I'm glad I grew up in the 80s.
I mean, when I look at the evolution, yes, I had Pong, and then I had an Atari 20, which I still have an Atari 2600, and then we went to
Ah,
Nintendo. But all of this
mhm.
was offline. If you
Yeah.
wanted to play, you brought the game system with you, to go over
Yeah.
to your friend's house.
Mhm.
And now, I mean, it's great that we're all connected, but like you said, you don't know if there's a predator. You don't
Yeah.
know who's on that other side of that console or
Mhm.
across the world. You don't know.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've enabled ourselves to have such communication is great, but I don't want to say it has to be police, but it has to somewhat. And
Yeah.
the other avenue about this, when you're talking about darkness, I remember picking up a copy of Tomb Raider, the video game,
Mhm.
a more recent one in the mid 2000s. And there was like blood and gore and ripping of people and I'm like, I can't play this.
Yeah.
I give me my Lego games and I'll play those now, but it's like I could not, it was just too graphic. And at
Yeah.
what point have we become so desensitized to violence? And that kind of goes back to the school thing, is when did we become so desensitized to violence?
Yeah,
If
it's
you see
true.
somebody's nipple or they're breastfeeding, oh my gosh, we can't have that. But hey, this guy just shot somebody and we're not even going to give you a warning. At least when I was growing up, if you have small children or sensitive adults, please leave the room. And then they
Yeah.
would show the story. Now it's like wherever you want to go. It's
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah. And speaking of video games, I remember when Mortal Kombat came out. Remember that game?
Hmm.
And it was all over the news because it had blood and guts and fatalities in there. And then once that came out, everybody had to top it and top it and top it and top. And the same thing with media out there. If something gets a lot of clicks, something gets a lot of views on some of these platforms, well, guess what? We know what's working. Do that again. Show
Yeah,
that bad stuff. Show somebody getting hurt. Dark web stuff. But it's not on the dark web. It's on most of these social media platforms. So we are trying to safeguard people from that. And if that's what you want to watch, then, I guess. But if you're tired of seeing that or tired of coming across it accidentally, that's when hopefully you jump on Blessn and then you start posting because I like to share anything that's positive that happened to me. Hopefully it brightens somebody else's day. So you can even share some of your struggles and advise people on how you got through it. It doesn't have to be everything is uplifting, but as long as it's ends with something like, hey, I was going through this struggle, the Boston Marathon, and it stressed me out, blah, and you went and took these steps. Those are the kind of stories you want to see on our platform because there's enough platforms out there to show you the negative stuff. So we thought, let's create a positive place.
which is good because as an author, I have this situation where if I turn into social media, we have this whole thing now where our readers will come out and say something. It's like, oh, authors should not re indie authors should not be reading their own reviews. They should not be doing this. They should not be doing that. It's like, why are you policing us? We're not doing anything, but they shouldn't self-recommend their books. Okay, so who's going to recommend our books?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's like, and that's the funny thing about the internet and social media is because now we have all these parameters of this is the way it should be. You should be a trad wife. You should be this. And I wanted to say something briefly when you were talking about young men that you have to counsel occasionally. The fact is now we have all these thought leaders out there that are creating such a nasty narrative, and I'm not going to name names. I think we all know, but they're creating these incels, and this isn't healthy because you're. Why do we have to have thought leaders? Why can't we have critical thinking and form our own opinions? But social media has given us our opinions that here, this is what you're supposed to feel and
Hmm.
see.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is what I've found is on some social media platforms, people are pretending to be something, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh, okay, this person seems cool, and they're selling their OnlyFans page or they're promoting an OnlyFans. I'm like, whoa, whoa, wait, how did this get on my social media feed? So,
I had a friend recently that she posted a comment on somebody's picture who was a celebrity, a
mhm.
alleged celebrity. I'll let me clarify that. And he's like, well, come over to Telegram and talk to me over there. So she did.
Oh
And
no,
midway through, he asked for money to join his inner circle so he can talk to her
oh,
privately because, there's got to be NDAs and everything else.
hmm,
So I did some digging because of what I do, and I contacted his management company, and his Facebook page was recently removed. And we always suspected he was fake anyway. But,
hmm.
today we're talking, and she's like, yeah, somebody got scammed out of I don't know how much money because she thought she was dating Brad Pitt.
Oh God,
And um the fact is he was sending AI stuff now. So these scammers have upped their
oh,
game and are using AI because
yeah.
you've seen the videos where the guy turns himself into Taylor Swift.
Oh, I haven't seen
Oh
that. Wow,
yeah, yeah.
what?
They use AI to turn themselves and they do a split screen into a celebrity.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So
That's
it's scary out there, folks.
very scary because what is it going to be in 5 years
Yeah.
when somebody's portraying you and calling somebody in your family saying, hey, I'm in some trouble. Send me $50 or $100 or whatever. Can you help me out? And it's not even you. You're just thinking you're doing a FaceTime call with somebody and hey, look, believe me, it's me. I'm right here.
Yeah.
So that's scary.
Yeah.
That is scary.
And I hope that, I hope the AI bubble bursts and we don't have to deal with that stuff, but there's always going to be people that can manipulate things. I mean, it's
Yeah,
always the
yeah.
nature of the beast. So, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to add?
No, I mean, I just had a great conversation. I feel uplifted now just by talking to you, and I have a lot to think about. So, no, I mean, Blessing's a great app. I hope all your listeners join. I hope you join and set up a profile. And we're just trying to, what we say, fade scrolling over doom scrolling and reducing brain rot. I
That
guess
would be a
that's
good, that'd be a good thing. That would be a
yeah,
good thing. Thank you
yeah.
for coming
Well, give
on.
us a try.
So the conversation always goes where it goes, and Gerald and I talked off camera or off recording that he wishes he would have had more mental health resources. And you need mental health. No matter what, we all think that, well, I don't need that. I can just keep going. It's never going to catch up with me. And the fact is, it does, whether we realize it or not. You know, the fact is we have these little stressors. It could be your job, it could be, you're working two jobs, it could be the lack of money, it could be that, you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay your rent, how you're going to feed your family, how you're going to be a parent when you're working so much and you have no time for yourself. All these things come into play and we don't really look at those things. And then, say you're under all this stress and then you go and decide, I'm going to go on social media because I want a little stress relief. Well, if you start doom scrolling, there's going to be all these things that are just going to incite you. They're going to, I don't want to say gin you up, but they're going to tick you off. They're going to go, why? They're going to feed your anger, feed your stress. And then you start losing faith and losing hope. And that's one thing about the Blessn app. It's supposed to be about hope. I have not checked it out yet, but I want to go back to where I was going. So when we look at all these little stressors and then we look at social media feeding it, I have to take myself down to a point of earlier this year, back in January, or I'm taping this in December. So this would be last January. And I have to take myself back to that point of getting the cancer diagnosis and thinking about I have to fight cancer. I'm fighting for my life. Granted, that may seem a bit melodramatic because it wasn't that big a deal. It was, but it wasn't. But when you get that diagnosis, you don't know where you're at. You don't know because at that point, I didn't fully know if it had spread. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what treatment looked like. And then through this course of treatment, as I'm going through this, and certain things in the world seem like they're imploding. The world that we knew is imploding. Nothing is the same. It's not good. It feels mucky. There's the narrative in your head that starts going, so why am I fighting? Why am I trying to make myself live? Why am I trying to survive if the world is turning to crap? How do I move past this? How do I keep going if I don't feel like there's anything worth going? And I have to look back at when my mom was near her end. And I remember trying to give her reasons to live, telling her that you don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. You don't know what it's going to be like. And that's the fact. And that's one of the things I think I kept going because I didn't know what would be in store for me. I didn't know what might come next. And now, now that I've been cancer free for several months and I've made it through two rounds of being cancer free, I look at the bigger picture and say, okay, so what do I want to do with my life now? I know that my mortality is there, that I'm not going to live forever. I am well aware it's not the 20-year-old mindset of I got this by the balls and I'm going to keep going. It's more about how do I make the most out of my life now? What do I want to contribute? What do I want to do with my life? And doing it. And part of that's the podcast, and part of it's writing, because those are the things that I'm passionate about. So when you're stressed, instead of doom scrolling, check out the Blessn app or step away from apps altogether. Step away from the negativity of what the media wants. Because what we were talking about earlier is that, oh, well, this gave me a click. So let me keep putting out more garbage. Let me keep putting out more dark stuff. If you keep feeding that beast, then your fear is going to be there. Your worry is going to be there. And I'm not saying don't worry and don't be fearful, but don't let it consume you because it consuming you can lead to more stress, which is stress on your heart, which is raising your blood pressure, which is more stress on your heart. And it can start showing up as inflammation in your body. It can rewire your brain. So find a way to step back. Find a way to just be who you need to be for you. I'm not saying bury your head in the sand. You need to know what's going on in the world, but take care of yourself, your mental health, and those that you love. And if you've never faced those things that really got to you, those traumatic events you lived through, take a step back and do that. Because as I brought up about Chuck E. Cheese, I can sit here and vividly remember being in this tech room hiding. And my friend, she's still a friend to this day. This was back in 1986. Stuffing napkins in my mouth because I was hyperventilating and my legs went out because I was terrified. And the interesting thing is, I mean, there's in between there. When the guy broke in, he put a gun in her face, not mine, hers. And I saw the guy trying to get into my boss's office with the gun. And that's when I took off running. But my point is, she handled that stress better than I did. And just because she did doesn't mean it didn't affect her. Just because she did doesn't mean that my stress wasn't valid or my fear wasn't valid. Because we both had that same fear. It's just one of us handled it differently. So if you went through an event with somebody and they're just kind of like, oh, it's fine, you have to look at how you're affected. While they say feelings aren't facts, your feelings are still valid because they are your feelings. So I will get off my soapbox now. Find some resources if you can for mental health. And if necessary, reach out and I'll try to help you find some. But be cautious if you're going to talk to AI because you never know what the algorithm is going to tell you. And you don't want somebody saying, yes, that's valid. When you're saying, I don't want to live anymore. And if the computer simulation says, no, you don't need to. Because life is a little bit more important than that. Even though it may be a struggle, there's lessons here for us to learn. And we'll survive. You'll survive until the day you're not supposed to be here. And that's okay, because I know eventually I won't be here. But for now, I am, and I'm going to do the most I can with my life and find what makes me happy. So, on that note, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, whenever you're listening. I'd like to thank Fast Susie for the intro and outro music. I'd like to thank Gerald for coming on the show. And most importantly, I'd like to thank you, the listener. You know, just hang in there. Times are weird, times are stressful, and the world seems a little crazy. But we have to come together as a community and we have to take care of ourselves and understand how precious life is. So I hope you have a great day, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.